Hi, everybody. It's Maria Burke here, and welcome to another 321 Focus Together video. And this evening, I have Enda Donnellan with us. Enda, you're really welcome. Would you like to introduce yourself, please? I can see we're in for a bit of fun here, lads.
Well, yeah, uh, I have been given the name Enda Donnellan in this lifetime, and I'm enjoying that. My middle name is Mary, which I've recently reclaimed in the last couple of years. I wasn't too impressed with it as a school kid, and however, going into my mid 40s, I rekindled my love for the name Mary, and so I think there can be medicine in names as well. I think there's often when we I think in some ways spirit spoke through my mother to give me the middle name Mary, and it took me a long time to realize that medicine. So, and I feel it's around my own, I suppose, my own wish to uh, reunite the sacred masculine and sacred feminine, both within myself, but also to transmit that through into society. I think it's a very important energy to for us to bring about in our culture, since there's so much things can be so polarized in our society, men and women. So I think we're going through great healing, great change, and a lot of men and a lot of women. I think we're going to rise up together, and I think we've come probably in human history, probably from a strong matriarchal and then patriarchal, and I think it'd be nice, I feel, for us to rise together as humans, and I think that's the way forward.
I love that because I'm very much for that whole piece, that whole I think the name I have it is Synergy as well. So it's like also where everybody has something to lead for, and then everybody needs to be the enthusiastic follower. But I love your piece about Enda Mary Donnellan, because I also, and I was commenting on your Bridget's crosses before we started, but my middle name is Bridget, and like that as well, I had to go back and realize that while it was my granny's name and it was never a name, well, it was a bit, you didn't think it was like the coolest name to have as a second name. I know when I started to put it back in my name and started to use it officially, definitely there was a new energy, and it's been very powerful. And I find there are Bridgets turning up all the time. And of course, if likewise you've got Mary turning up all the time, well, Maria is Mary, isn't it? So here I am, I'm reflecting something back at you, Enda, right? So that's a lovely intro for us. So would you like to tell us about your spiritual journey and about your work?
I suppose I in some way considered myself an open-minded seeker from from being in school. Um, Felt I always had an openness about an innate understanding of um, of the right thing to do in certain ways. To treat others like you'd like to be treated yourself. I think I had that already in my energy body, an innate compassion for things, and I suppose in school I remember kind of facing bullies when people were bullied and stepping in, and this I just had a sense of when injustices were happening, that I didn't see when things weren't right. I felt the need to step in, so and protect. So that I used to do a lot of running, and that gave me a lot of interest in health and understanding the body. And through my own injuries, I was in the channeled through the Orthodox system, and I've seen the shortcomings of that system. So in fairness to my parents, they brought me to really cool top specialists for my knee injuries, and I was running at quite a high level. I had ran a few international races. So I seen that, really a lot of these people with titles and so on, and big educations, they didn't really have much of an idea what was going on in my body. And they really just each one really wanted to do something different. So their diagnostic evaluations didn't compute for me. So I felt there had to be something better than that. There had to be something that was more true and consistent. So that started me on a journey to understand. I didn't have a science subject, so I chose a course, that the only course I could get into in Ireland, which I could learn about the body, which was a physiology course down in Carlow. And they didn't have a stipulation where you had to have a science subject. So I started from scratch really in third level, trying to find out what cells were and I was kind of the only one out of 60 that didn't know the composition of a cell and, cell membranes and all that crack. So I caught up anyway, and I then went to study. There was a course starting up in England called a natural medicine degree course. So I started studying natural medicine in England, and then I realized I just wanted to work with my hands predominantly because I'm a very touchy-feely kind of guy. And so I went and trained as an osteopath, and trained as an osteopath for 5 years. And then I've been in practice since 2003. And then that brought me, I've always been interested in meditation, in health, in fasting, in, various aspects of how we can live a holistic life. So that brought me, I was really working here as an osteopath. I just felt I wanted to be of service to a wider community. So I started doing spiritual events and producing those with friends. And that's really a passion of mine. I get a lot of excitement out of it. We bring a lot of mystics and spiritual speakers both together in Ireland and from all over the world. So it's really a passion, and it's just, as if you've ever produced events, it can be very you kind of you have to have balls of steel really. Whether you're a man or a woman, I don't know, you have to have ovaries of steel in a way, or balls of steel. I think it's just because you just follow your heart, and you follow your service. And I have a huge amount of respect for people who produce and go out of their way to risk producing big events, because as we know, like even from the festival world this summer, a lot of these people will take huge hits and could bankrupt some people personally. So I've been in that place. I've lost a lot of money on events, but I persevere because I feel really passionate about spirituality and providing a platform for people to find deeper stuff about themselves. For me, it's kind of the word seva. It's like the word service comes into it. So a lot of friends think, geez, you're mad doing these, and why do you do it? And you put so much energy into it, and it's just really, it's my seva, it's my service to the world and to humanity, and so that's what we do.
Right. And seva, that's a new word for me. I'm going to have to write that down in my little book. So that's a term I haven't come across before.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Is that from a particular language or a particular school of thought, or is it?
I believe it. Well, it's an Eastern term.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So does it fit in with like dharma and karma and seva? Is that all part of the same?
Yeah.
Okay. So I've learned a new word. Thank you. Right.
Yeah.
So these events you're talking about have a name, don't they?
Yeah, they've had various names. Some of them have lasted.
Right. Well, so the one that people might know about at the moment.
Sure. Conscious Concert is the one myself and Masha do. Masha is my business partner. and there's a girl who's come on recently, Michelle, and also been part of the team. So Conscious Concert is the main one, and then Winter Solstice is another one that we do. We do the Winter Solstice down in Newgrange, beside Newgrange. Yeah.
Fabulous. So I put the links in for those afterwards. So as regards the kind of practices that you would have you found since the pandemic that you're doing different things, or do you have tips that you want to share with people? Because my view, and this is what I was saying to you before we started, is, you know, I think, especially for women, we're much more likely to talk about things. It doesn't matter kind of whether you're a professional or you're more of a hippie. Like I used to be the businesswoman, I'm more of a hippie now. But I would still know people around me who might be like doctors or lawyers or business women. They're not afraid to pull an affirmation card. They're not afraid to go to meditation and yoga. But I just have a huge feeling at the moment that there are probably a lot of men, especially men from kind of business backgrounds, who don't really know where to start, and they may have used, like you, running or swimming or something, and they might not be able to use those things now, you know, for their emotional support and for their mental support. So have you got tips for us that you'd like to share? Because I think also it's an opportunity for a sort of a spiritual, the start of some spiritual seeds for anybody who hasn't done anything before.
Sure. Well, I think first and foremost, I think a lot of people are heading into this inverted commas lockdown. I think a lot of people are exhausted from their work anyway, and it's a great time to rest. You know, it's all about our capacity. What do we have the capacity to do for ourselves? So, you know, some of the stuff I do, maybe people wouldn't, you know, are still maybe developing the capacity to do that. So, you know, for the last couple of years now, I've started to, I don't start my work as an osteopath until 1:30 in the day. So all morning is, you know, designated silence. So I live in a commuter village, so I can work quite late. But for me, getting up and the morning time is silence and time for me to come from the dream state or the astral state into this state, you know, so bringing the two worlds, my deep subconscious into this world, so that I can become an integrated human conscious being. So so not much, not a lot has changed for me since the lockdown, you know, except that I'm obviously working less. But in relation to my spiritual time, I'm still doing pretty much the same type of meditation and practice. What I would say is, you know, is this an over 18s?
Yeah, I assume so. Yeah.
You know, I think, you know, I'll just say stuff that as I see it. And
Mm-hmm.
you know, when Italy went into lockdown, I've seen an article. You know, the biggest porn channel in the world, Pornhub, offered free premium porn to men. Now, I suppose I've a real, you know, I'd be concerned about things like that in relation to, I'm really, you know, I used to be in a lot of men's groups. I love just human groups now. But, you know, from a male perspective, I think a lot of men lose their power and their mojo through, if they're using porn, for example. So I suppose a bit of background for myself, I'm going through an interesting period of celibacy. So for a 3-year period, which I'm documenting, and maybe I can offer some teachings to people at a further time. But it's about us how can we become empowered and energized by not losing energy. And, you know, for men can lose a lot of energy through things like porn. You know, they can, you know, and even women, if you look at the tantric and be it from China or India, you know, women also lose a lot of power from sexual activity as well. And that's not to mean, what I mean by that is not suppressing sexuality, but what I understand it to be is becoming more sexual, more sensual. increasing our senses. When our senses come alive, we actually feel more vibrant. We actually feel more potent as a human being. We're more present to each other. We're more content in ourselves rather than depleted. So I don't advocate people being in misery, not having sex or anything like that. Like that's we've done that model. That doesn't work. I'm all about really, really, how can we just become really highly frequentized and buzzing with and overflowing with love and abundance. And we all have certain ways of finding self-love, and we can find self-love, in ways that might deplete us. So we might overeat, or we might overuse sex, or we might, just not do good things for ourselves. Do you know what I mean? Any type of addiction. Okay, now we can't over shop too much because we can't get at the bloody shops. But
there are still people doing it online.
there is people, and over drinking alcohol and so on, and these are ways that we try and soothe ourselves. And it's a great time to just not eat very much and not drink very much. And I see kind of memes on Facebook and stuff, memes of, there was one meme of this couple, and they're so fat, they're looking at the door after quarantine going, how do we get out of here? They become so fat. So it's like, gosh, and I see it like so many people, can't keep out of the fridge and so on. So we're really emotional. That's emotional eating. And a lot of that is based on fear and concern. And I get it. I understand it. I'm not personally afraid, or I'm not concerned. I do feel there's an agenda at play. I don't know whether you want to go there at all in this thing, but that's another conversation possibly. But it's really, people don't know. There's so many aspects of miscommunication that people just don't have the feet on the ground. So they're too willing to be led through that. So I think the important thing is to come back to ourselves, so that we can discern our own truth. We can see what's really happening by not denying any information, but listening to maybe experts from, scientists, particularly from various kind of walks of society, how they, how these figures are matching up or not matching up. And I think we just need to have intelligent conversations rather than throwing mud or stones at anybody. But, we need to look at the truth, and we need to not be afraid of the truth, and we need to name it, and we're all in this together. And I do feel that we're, in our highest frequency, we're working from a non-dual state. So, we're all one. So whatever's happening, there's nobody doing anything to us. We're collectively doing it and choosing to do this to ourselves. And once we understand that, we can make choices for the greater good of all. And recognize that these people that we might perceive are doing something to us, they're not doing something to us. Nobody can do anything to us unless we consent to it. So, but we can name aspects of the hologram that we need to identify, because it's all our own hologram, so we can name these names, because we do have to be transparent about it. But we need to, I love these kind of methods that they have, like in Africa and so on, where if somebody was acting in discord or out of alignment with the community, that they weren't ostracized at all. They were brought into the circle, and they were sat in the circle and held in love, and but it was named and it was talked about. And yes, if they didn't change their ways, then they were ostracized, but the first course of treatment was to hold in love and to name, and to not be afraid of naming that, so we can all just actually not deny the big elephant in the room.
That's lovely what you're saying about in Africa. I know in some of the tribes, don't people get a song? Is it before they're born, and then if something happens like that where they sort of stray, that the tribe sings the song to them to remind them who they are, like, and it is so beautiful. So it's all come from a place of love, like.
And the Mayans would do, you know, it's so this is indigenous nature-based wisdom. You know that so many traditions did that. I remember reading about the Mayans also did that. They used to sing to the soul, and back to how we get our name. They'd sing to the soul coming down, and the shamans, both men and women, would then tell the parents the name of the child based on the frequency that they were carrying onto this planet. And that child then knew through their name the frequency and the gift they had for the world.
That is amazing. And it's really interesting because I know, you know, the way well, I have three kids, and like choosing their names beforehand and then having a couple of names and then go, no, that name just doesn't suit the child. And I know with my son, he had no name for 10 weeks because I just couldn't find what felt right. So I would so agree with what you're saying there. Like, it is so important. The other interesting thing, just when we're touching on this, is that I know from reading some of the books about the Essenes that the Essenes, one of the first things they did was they looked at the child's birth chart, and they would know immediately what that child had come in to do, and they would make sure that child would be educated with whoever the experts were, so that child had the opportunity to completely shine and become all that child was here to be. So, like, it's a pity on some level that we've lost some of these things, but I think at the moment we've got the opportunity to start remembering this information and start bringing it back into our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd like to think that from what I've felt into myself is that we're very connected. The Irish are very connected to Essene, you know, Essene wisdom, Essene lineage, because there seems to be strong energy of the Atlanteans, of how they broke out and went through the North Africa and also went to Ireland.
Okay.
So the Essenes, they held an amazing role in the Qumran Desert of knowledge, and that's why they were lived. The Qumran Desert was really inhabitable and not very forgiving. You know, the environment wasn't very forgiving. So they how they lived out in the Qumran Desert, you know, was really to protect the wisdom of the that was passed down from civilization to civilization. And the some of us probably know as well, you know, from our history that an Egyptian goddess or Egyptian queen came to Ireland in 588 BC, Queen Tia Tepe, and married an Irish king, and she brought the Torah, the Book of Knowledge, and it was supposedly buried on the Mound of Hostages or around that area. So there's I think in these times, you know, I know it's very easy to say because we're both Irish and we love the Irish and all that, but it's like there's a lot of different energies pointing towards Ireland being a place of change. And that's why I think it's very important that we as a nation step into our power at these times and we don't give our freedoms away. So we need to step into our seen energy and not buy into the mainstream narrative without discerning it properly. I'm sure we're both empathizing with people really who've been affected directly by coronavirus and who've died, but we still have to look at the virulency of this. It's quite benign in relation to, you know, as viruses go. And being a physiologist, by, you know, my background in physiology, and that's I'm at home with reading medical peer review studies and medical texts. I know the language, and I've done a lot of research around, you know, the testing that the PCR test shouldn't be used. The inventor of it in the 80s said this should not be used for diagnostic purposes. It should only be used for research and development. There's things that aren't adding up in relation to the whole situation. Um, and also, it's not, the I know people go, oh, people are saying 5G is causing this, and this is nonsense. Of course 5G isn't causing the spread of the virus, but what 5G is doing, which is the radiation is lowering humanity's immune system. And scientists, hundreds and hundreds of scientists, have written direct letters to the EU and UN with science saying, we have to look at this. This is crazy. This is an abomination in relation to human health and how we move forward. This is not healthy. And we don't need 5G. I know they're saying, oh, well, super fast and super this and whatever. And we're there is an agenda.
We're gone there for a minute. I don't know what happened. It's like, woo!
Yeah, well, there's all sorts of things. We're on the net, so
I know. And it's funny because when my camera wouldn't go the other evening, I was going, okay, is somebody trying to stop me from doing these because I'm sharing different alternatives? And you don't want to get into conspiracy theory, and I don't want my energy to go into that space. But yeah, it is as it is, and that's the way it is. Yeah.
I think we have to look at it all, and I think we have to trust. We have to have independent people, educated, independent people with no agenda, discussing this in a quantumous, balanced manner. That's all, And we shouldn't be afraid of that conversation or trying to suppress that conversation. We should be encouraging it.
Yeah. The biggest issue though with that conversation is, where do you find these independent people that everybody would agree would be allowed to have to lead the conversation? That's the biggest problem, because so often, well, hopefully it'll start to end, but so often I find it's the people who have agendas who find their way in, or they've got the power to get in and to start manipulating all these things. But that's a whole other different day's work, isn't it? So going back to what's happening now, and if there's somebody listening in who is looking for some tips to support themselves now, are there some simple things that you could suggest?
Simple things. Well, I have my own father on echinacea and vitamin C, so I'm making sure he's dosing up on that himself.
Okay.
There is, we have a medicine cabinet in our gardens, so we've got nettles, we've got dandelion leaves, and there's beautiful wild garlic going. I have loads of garlic down by the river here in Slane, so I'm constant every day. I'm munching on wild garlic.
Okay.
And I'm mindful not taking too many dandelion flowers, because they're the bees need the dandelion flowers, but the dandelion leaves, we can take a few dandelion leaves. They're really potent for our health. And nettles are really good for our kidneys and our immune system, and just generally detoxing. I've done a couple of liver cleanses in the last few weeks. They're fairly intense. It takes 2 weeks, and you can go online and look up a liver cleanse, and you can flush out the liver of stones. And like, I have a really healthy diet, but I was surprised the first liver cleanse I did, like loads of stones came out. And I've been mostly vegetarian for years, so it's a good time to build up our strength and our immunity. Obviously exercise and so on, and also, even though we've discussed some stuff that can be challenging, we have to limit what we expose our brain to as well. I listen to a little bit of this every day, but I don't smother myself in this stuff, because you need to remember that all is okay. We need to do what we need to do, and we need to show up in love. and not in fear. But if we're getting into a state of mind that we're feeling this kind of um, victimization, or people are doing this to us, I think it's a good sign to just actually know to back off that information for a while and come back to it again when you're feeling all right and more empowered, because it's just information and it's just a hologram, as I said. It's just the way humanity are choosing to play out, and we really need to be anchoring ourselves in love and peace and contentment, while also engaging with this reality, or this type, because there is many realities we can choose. Lots of people are choosing various different realities. Some people are not watching anything on Facebook or anything on the media and have taken this time to choose another reality, which is absolutely fine. And it's great, but there may be another reality coming into their reality soon enough, so they may have to engage with it if that does happen. So, but it's all about what do we feel happy to do? If we're going into, I don't think we're serving anybody by going into anger and victimization and feeling helpless.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's something I read a few weeks ago, and it was about yeah, whether you believe you're intentionally doing good and doing things for the right reason, or whether you are acting with less than integrity. Either way, it's still part of the divine plan. And I thought that was fabulous, because it's like, okay, whatever's going on, there's obviously there's a crisis, but to me there's obviously a huge opportunity as well. But even if what seems to be a bad thing has come along, it has given a lot of people, I'm calling them like corona blessings. There are just so many blessings in all the middle of all this. And I think if we manage ourselves the right way, it can be an enormous opportunity, whether it's for your rest or whatever that you need. One thing I would say though is that I'm noticing that, if I have my bad day, like yesterday when the camera wouldn't work, I started spinning out of it. And then at least I have the tools to catch myself. But I do know sometimes people are actually getting angry because old stuff is starting to bubble up. And especially people who, have been busy and escaping having to sit with themselves maybe all their lives. So they can be experiencing the anger, etc. Do you know what I mean? And different emotions coming up. And like, that's okay. It's all part of the human condition, isn't it? So yeah. Just on your nettles, I know how I would prepare the dandelion leaves. If people need to know, is I just maybe pick 3 dandelion leaves, rinse them off, and then I would just chop them up and pour boiling water on. Is that right? But I don't know how to do the nettles.
Well, you can make a nettle soup.
Okay.
It's good. These the perfect time for the nettles because they're young nettles, and it's better to take young nettles than when the nettles are older. So, first of all, ask the nettle: is it okay to take the head off it?
And I take the head of you.
Take the head of you, and just take fill a few heads and feel into what nettle would love to become soup. And mush it up and add a bit of stock and make some nettle soup.
And I presume you need gloves on to take top off the nettles, or else you're going to need dock leaves.
Well, if you have I usually have a pot, and if I have the scissors just nips it, and the top just sits on top of the scissors, and I just flick it into the pot.
Oh right, there's a technique, right? Okay, very interesting. I've never had nettle soup or nettle soup, and yeah, okay. And do you cook it with other vegetables as well? Is that what you do, or just with the stock, vegetable stock? Is it?
Sometimes onions. I put onions in. Nice, onions. Okay. Keep it simple. Yeah.
Okay, right. Fabulous, fabulous. Right. Before we wrap this up,
cleavers. Somebody was telling me recently about cleavers.
Oh, Robin run the hedge, as they call it. Yeah.
Yeah. So in the last few days because cleavers are really good for clearing out the lymphatic system. So what you can do is, cleavers are those sticky things so for those
sticky backs, yeah.
Sticky back plants. So you can take a bunch of them and you can juice them. I've a masticator, which is doesn't destroy the enzymes in the plant. You can also put the cleavers in a jug of water and shake the water, and it takes off some of the nutrients out of the cleavers, and drink the water from that. And it's a really good immune booster. Cleaver water or the juice of cleavers as well.
Fabulous. Right. Thank you for all that. Okay, so I think, you know what, I think it's time to wrap this up. Is there anything else you want to share with us before we go? No? Wait. Well, look, Enda, that was really fascinating, and I learned an awful lot from you. I learned an awful lot more about you as well. So I'll put your website and Facebook links below for anybody who wants to follow up on things. And so, look, everybody, thank you so much for being here. Enda, thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing you all in another video again soon. Take care. Bye.